George Wendt as Santa Claus is possibly my new favourite thing. I love George Wendt. I'm a big fan of Christmas films. Santa Baby definitely had elements that appealed to me. This is the 2006 film directed by Ron Underwood, written by Garrett, Frawley, and Brian Turner, and stars, of course, George Wendt and also Jenny McCarthy as our protagonist Mary. And I have to say, what's really interesting about this is that a lot of the things in this that I would have expected in terms of character personalities and character actions, it was the exact opposite of every other similar film. And I will explain that. I won't give any spoilers. I certainly won't go anywhere near the ending of this. But it was just the complete opposite of what I'd expected. In a way, that's a good thing. It was fresh. It was surprising. But at the same time, I feel like the traditional character actions work for a reason, and they have elements to overcome. I feel like the character development here wasn't quite as prominent. Not the biggest problem, not the end of the world, didn't hinder my enjoyment too much, but from a writing perspective, I would never write something with so little character development in it. I feel like it needed, film traditions and narrative traditions exist for a reason because they work. The fact that this film decided to twist that on its head is unique. It's brave. It kind of worked. To make a long story short, Mary is a business owner or business executive and very successful, works around the clock, doesn't even acknowledge that it's Thanksgiving. But she gets a phone call from her mother, and it turns out that her father is ill. Her father just happens to be Santa Claus, George Wendt. And she decides there and then, despite her busy schedule, that she has to go to the North Pole and visit her father, but also somebody has to take over the family business this close to Christmas. And there are things here that confuse me a little bit because she takes her assistant along with her, and her assistant is just like, yeah, alright, your father's Santa, this is all normal, let's just go with it. And then a few other people from her personal life also encounter this environment, and they just kind of take it as fact. And you have the elves getting everything ready, and I don't know, maybe they perceived it as a kind of factory operation with workers dressed as elves. Pretty sure that's a health and safety problem. But there were, people didn't really question this. She didn't really feel any need to hide it, which is a good thing, but at the same time, it's atypical. Her actions are all atypical. I do think part of the fact that makes this different makes it unbelievable. The fact that she was very busy, worked around the clock, but instantly dropped everything to go to her father and was quite happy to do it is very atypical to what this kind of character would normally do in a film like this. Normally they'd have some dilemma trying to weigh up how they're going to manage their workload with, the guilt of feeling like they have to visit a sick parent. And then she decides to take it upon herself to take over her father's role at Christmas, which is obviously pretty awesome and a very lovely thing to do. But usually with this kind of film, it would be the father or the Santa Claus saying, it's your turn, it's your time to step up, and the daughter would be very much reluctant to do this, and she would want no part in this. She's too busy, she hasn't had any training. She's the complete opposite. She's the one advocating for her father to let her do this, because George Wendt, Santa Claus, is actually reluctant to let her take over the reins, literally and figuratively. So it's a bit peculiar, and it feels like it's too easy. Some of her actions don't feel believable if she was really that obsessed with her work, which is the impression we get in the beginning. There would have been more internal conflict that we would get to see on the outside. So I feel like her actions are unbelievable, and because she's just so willing and there's no real expression of conflict, internal conflict, it means there's not a lot of room for character development throughout. In fact, Santa Claus goes through a bigger character development and journey than she does. With regards to the elves and things, they are quite funny. There's one scene where she's trying to do market research to see what kind of gifts to give, and she gives one of the elves, I won't spoil it too much, but she gives one of the elves a toaster and asks the elf how he feels. And the elf, being the elf, is ecstatic because she has given him a gift, and he's just grateful that she has acknowledged him and gifted him an item. And things don't necessarily go to plan. It's interesting enough. I was curious to see how she'd get things off of the ground because they're quite behind schedule. There is a particularly funny line where an elf has to admit he doesn't know what he's doing, and then she asked why he'd been saying the reports were fine, and he says something along the lines of, you asked to see reports that were going well, so he just told her what she wanted to hear. I haven't explained that one very well, but the point is, there's a lot of humour in this. I did find it quite entertaining, so from a viewing perspective, I think it's good fun. It's reasonably well directed. The scenery's pretty festive. It doesn't actually have that much festive vibe to it compared to a lot of other films. It feels kind of overcrowded, a little bit stuffy. It's not like bright and airy and magical as a lot of similar films. But it's not too much of a problem. There is obviously there are elves everywhere and Santa Claus. You still feel Christmassy. I just have a problem with the writing of quite a few of the characters. That's kind of my issue. A lot of the characters needed a lot more work. But you can overcome that. And you can power through, and it's not so bad. It's quite fun. I definitely recommend it if you're into Christmas films. If you're not that bothered about Christmas films, I'm not going to recommend it as one of those films you have to see, because it's not that amazing. But George Wendt was very good as Santa Claus. Really enjoyed his performance. Yeah, it wasn't bad. It wasn't perfect. Definitely room for improvement. But I enjoyed Santa Baby enough.